A few weeks ago, Advent wreaths started showing up here in church, the rectory, and school. It was kind of fun watching the kids make their own at Advent Bash or in their classrooms. Many of us have Advent wreaths in our homes. I kind of hope most of us do. Some are more elaborate than others. Some even include a fifth candle, and then when Christmas comes, they light that candle as the sign of the light of the world being born into human time. As people light their candles of their Advent wreaths, some say a prayer, some sing a song, some take just a moment of silence. There is one element of the Advent wreath that is important, but I think often overlooked. What do you think I'm referencing? I am talking about the empty space in the middle. That hole right there in the center of the Advent wreath. That emptiness right there at the heart. That space speaks something to the heart of this season. It speaks something to the heart of this day. You see, we would not even be celebrating this season except that Mary was able to keep an empty space inside of her on purpose. She was not so filled with her own agenda and plans. She tried to carve an openness in solitude and in prayer to be open. And it was that which allowed Christ to be born. You see, when the angel came to announce and offer that invitation, Mary, would you be the one to birth Jesus into the world? She could have said no. She was free. Can you imagine the questions? Really? Who? Me? Why not somebody else? And this is going to hurt, isn't it? This is not the life I planned. This is going to change everything. But because she had intentionally nurtured enough of an openness, of an empty space inside of herself, at that request, she was able to give her answer. And she said, okay. And that openness would change the world. It has changed our world. For from her, our Jesus was born. My friends, for us to have meaningful lives, I am convinced that we too need to nurture a bit of that openness, that emptiness inside of ourselves, to not be so filled with the chatter of our minds and our feelings and our busynesses. And I think that there's not real space for Christ to work in us, except that, like Mary, we nurture that place. And it seems odd to say this time of year when lots mitigates against that, right? For many, this time of year, our schedules are even more full. Our bodies even more stuffed. The pressures seemingly even more than normal. Thus, the gift of the Advent wreath and that empty space in its middle, and our invitation to let that nurture one in us as well. Personally, for what it's worth, my personal Advent wreath doesn't look like much. It actually looks like 4 candles set on a table, because that's exactly what it is. And yet, I cannot even tell you what a gift it has been for me over the years as part of my prayer. After I get myself organized in the morning and before I plunge headfirst into the chaos of the day, every morning in Advent, I light my Advent candles and I just sit there for a moment. And then each night before I go to bed, I do the same thing. In the darkness, I light my Advent candles and I just take that moment of stillness. And it is my heartfelt prayer that just by sitting in that empty space for just a minute, God will nurture a bit more of an empty space inside of me, like was in Mary, to be willing, to be more available for what love would ask of me. And usually, there's this little Advent song that I play. I particularly like this version, and you could use whatever one you want, but let's do that now. Let's listen to a bit of that song and sit in the empty space at our Advent wreath and ask God for the grace to have a little bit more of an empty space in us as we prepare our hearts these days for Christ to be born anew in us and through us.